The room is darker than you expected. The faint outline of pottery jars glimmers against the wall, their shapes blurred by shadows that shift whenever the oil lamp sputters. The faint smell of vinegar and smoke hangs in the air. Somewhere outside, a rooster begins its first uncertain call. Another answers from farther away, as if Rome itself is stretching and yawning before sunrise. So, before we sink deeper into this moment, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, let the light dim, let the fan hum quietly, and let's drift into tonight's story together. The man stirs under a thin blanket of rough linen. His name is Lucius, though few people bother to remember it. To most of the city, he is simply another street vendor. His life fits inside a single room barely larger than his own cart. The floor is packed earth, the ceiling low enough that he can touch it with his hand. He wakes before dawn not because he wants to, but because the best-selling spots vanish quickly. In Rome, the early bird does not catch the worm. It catches a patch of shade before the sun does. He pulls himself upright and feels the stiffness in his shoulders. The city never sleeps quietly. All through the night, drunks stagger past his alley, dogs bark, and carts rattle over cobblestones. He has learned to live with it, the noise becoming a kind of background song that never ends. He lights a small oil lamp, and the flame trembles, showing the neat piles of goods he arranged before going to bed. Figs, olives, a few pieces of jewelry that may or may not be genuine, and a bundle of small trinkets carved from bone. Not much, but enough to fill his cart and, with luck, earn him enough for bread, rent, and a bit of wine. He runs a hand across the figs. They are soft, perhaps too soft, he sighs. The previous afternoon had been too hot, and he knows some will spoil before midday. Still, there is no time to mourn fruit. He slips on his tunic, tying it with a cord around his waist. The fabric is rough and patched. Once it was white, now it carries the brown memory of years spent under sun and dust. He takes a piece of stale bread from a clay jar, dips it in a bowl of watered wine, and chews slowly. Breakfast is not a meal so much as a habit, something to give the illusion of starting the day fed. From outside, faint sounds drift through the wooden door. A woman pouring water into a bucket. The rhythmic scrape of a broom across stone. The cough of a man waking after a night spent in drink. The city is beginning to breathe. Lucius moves toward his cart. It waits for him just outside, leaning against the wall like an old companion. The wheels creak even when still, and one handle has been repaired with a strip of bronze wire. He pats it affectionately. The cart has carried his life's fortune for years, one coin at a time. He sets to work. The figs are placed on one side, the olives in shallow clay bowls on the other. He arranges the small trinkets in a line, polishing each with a scrap of cloth. Historians still argue whether most street vendors in Rome were free men or freed slaves. Some worked independently, while others sold goods for wealthier merchants who preferred to stay invisible. Lucius likes to imagine himself among the independent ones. Whether that is true or not no longer matters. Freedom in Rome is not a legal line, it is a feeling that slips between days. He pours water into a small jar, dipping his fingers and smoothing his hair. He tries to tame it, though the effort is mostly symbolic. His reflection in a metal dish shows a face browned by sun, framed by tired eyes that have seen too many mornings like this. He smiles at himself, half in mockery, half in encouragement. Outside, the alley stretches narrow between two rows of cramped buildings. Laundry hangs overhead, swaying lightly in the pre-dawn air. Somewhere, a mule brays, impatient for its load. Lucius listens, timing himself to the rhythm of the waking city. A rat darts across his path, vanishing beneath a pile of broken tiles. He watches it go. Even the rats, he thinks, start their day early here. He lifts the front of the cart and tests its balance. The weight is good today, though he knows it will feel heavier by the time he reaches the forum. He glances once more into his room, checking if he forgot anything. A small bronze coin glints on the floor, one he must have dropped the night before. He picks it up, smiles, and pockets it. In Rome, even one coin can decide whether the day ends with meat or only bread. A faint pink begins to bloom on the eastern horizon. The first light catches the rooftops, the edges of temples, and the upper windows of wealthier homes. Lucius takes a deep breath. The air smells faintly of ashes and morning dew. He whispers a small prayer, though he cannot decide whether to direct it toward Mercury, god of trade, or Fortuna, who seems to enjoy ignoring him. He steps out fully into the alley, the cart's wooden wheels clattering softly behind him. The sound echoes, bouncing between walls. He moves slowly, careful not to wake the neighbor's dog. He has been bitten enough times to respect silence. On his left, a small shrine sits in a wall recess, dedicated to the household gods. Two little clay figures, sort darkened from years of offerings, look down at him. Someone has left a few fresh flowers at their feet. Lucius nods politely to them. In a city like Rome, it never hurts to greet every god, even the smallest ones. As he walks, he hums under his breath. A simple tune, one that vendors pass from one generation to the next. The streets are empty, but soon they will overflow with life. Bakers shouting prices, children running errands, slaves carrying baskets of grain. For now, the silence feels like a secret. He pauses at a crossroads where three alleys meet. The cobblestones here are uneven, and the smell of fish from a nearby tavern clings to the air. He knows the shortcut to the main road, a narrow path that runs behind a bathhouse. It saves him time, but always makes him uneasy. The walls there are too close, the shadows too deep. He decides to risk it anyway. As he turns, he spots an old woman already at work, sweeping dust from her doorstep into the gutter. She nods at him, not smiling, but not unkind. They have seen each other for years, without ever speaking a full sentence. In Rome, friendship often grows quietly, through glances and shared mornings. The cart rattles as he pushes it up a small incline. His muscles protest, but the movement is familiar, automatic. He passes a bakery where the first loaves are being pulled from the oven. The smell is divine, rich and warm, enough to make him pause. The baker, a heavy-set man with soot on his cheeks, notices him and lifts a loaf. Lucius shakes his head and smiles. Not today. Not until he earns it. By the time he reaches the end of the alley, The sun's first light touches the rooftops in gold. The city's heart is beginning to beat faster. He can hear the distant cries of other vendors already setting up, their voices echoing through the stone corridors. He knows he must hurry if he wants a good spot near the forum's edge. He adjusts his grip on the cart, glances once over his shoulder at the small alley he calls home, and then steps into the flow of the waking city. The day has begun, and the streets of Rome wait for him, as they have waited every morning for years. The stones are slick with dew, the air cool against his skin. Lucius smiles faintly, the kind of smile born from quiet acceptance. Another day, another gamble, another story written in dust and trade. He pushes forward. The cart's wheels complain with every turn as Lucius guides it onto the main road leading toward the forum. The narrow alley opens into a wider street paved with uneven stone, where the first hints of life begin to stir. Lamps flicker inside doorways. A few slaves hurry past, balancing baskets of vegetables or amphorae of wine on their shoulders. The air hums softly, not yet filled with the city's noise, but ready for it, like a breath held before a shout. He takes the familiar route past the baker's quarter. The scent of fresh bread is almost intoxicating now, rising from the ovens like an offering to the gods. Lucius lingers for a moment, watching the baker's assistants pull trays of round loaves from the fire. Each loaf costs more than he can afford this early in the day, so he only watches, feeling the heat touch his face. As the first rays of sunlight strike the buildings, they reveal how worn the streets truly are. The walls are pocked with graffiti, political slogans, crude jokes, drawings of gladiators with heroic muscles and dramatic poses. One wall even has a chalk outline of a man's face, with the words "Beware of thieves" scrawled beneath it. Lucius grins. The irony is not lost on him. He moves past a fountain where a young boy is filling jugs for his master. The water splashes rhythmically, echoing off the stone. The boy glances up and gives Lucius a quick nod, the silent greeting of two people who both know what it means to start early. The vendor nods back and keeps going, the sound of sloshing water following him down the street. As he pushes the cart uphill, the slope becomes steeper. He pauses halfway to rest, leaning on the handle and catching his breath. His palms are rough from years of this work, the calluses thick enough to make him almost immune to splinters. Almost, he rubs his hands together and looks down at the street stretching behind him. A few other vendors have started their journey too. A man balancing baskets of herbs on a pole across his shoulders, another leading a donkey piled high with clay pots, and a woman carrying a tray of pastries on her head, her steps light and confident. There is something comforting about seeing them all moving in the same direction, as if they are tiny parts of a great living machine that never stops turning. Historians still argue whether the streets of Rome were truly as chaotic as later writers described. Some claim they were marvels of order, patrolled by night guards and swept by slaves each morning. Others, reading the graffiti and court complaints, insist the city was more alive than tidy, a place where noise, smells, and people mixed in a kind of orchestrated disorder. Lucius, for his part, has no doubts. Rome is chaos wrapped in sunlight. He turns a corner, and the forum comes into view far ahead, not yet the center of noise and trade it will soon become, but already stirring. The tall columns catch the morning light, and banners sway gently between them. The sound of hooves echoes from marble as early carts deliver goods to the market square. He keeps walking. The road widens, flanked by small shops and workshops. One blacksmith is already hammering metal, the sparks leaping out like brief stars before fading on the stone floor. The rhythmic clang fills the air, steady and hypnotic. Lucius watches for a moment, admiring the precision in every strike. The blacksmith's apprentice looks up, face shiny with sweat, and waves a glowing rod in mock salute. Lucius laughs and waves back. A few steps later, he passes a small shrine built into the wall of a taverna. Someone has left a little loaf of bread there, still warm, for the household spirit. He stops and places a single olive beside it, a small offering for luck. You can never be too careful, especially when the gods are watching and business depends on their whims. The sun rises higher, and with it the streets grow busier. Donkeys bray, merchants shout, and beggars position themselves at corners, practicing their best pitiful expressions. A musician sits on a step, plucking a lyre and singing a rough tune about a lost love who ran off with a soldier. Lucius recognizes the melody. It has been sung in every district of the city for as long as anyone can remember, changing only in the details of who left whom. He passes the public baths, their massive walls sweating mist from the warm air inside. A few men stand at the entrance, gossiping while waiting for the doors to open. "Did you hear?" one says. "They say the emperor will appear at the games next week." Another shakes his head. "They say that every week." Lucius catches snippets as he walks by, half amused, half indifferent. Rome runs on rumors as much as it runs on bread. A stray dog trots beside his cart for a while, sniffing hopefully at the figs. Lucius tosses it a small piece of bread, and the dog devours it before darting off toward a butcher's stall. He shakes his head. Even dogs here understand the art of negotiation. Further along the street, a group of young men in short tunics are sweeping refuse into piles. The smell of yesterday's market lingers: fish, wine, rotting fruit, and smoke from burnt offerings. Lucius holds his breath as he passes, though the odor clings stubbornly to his clothes. He knows it will be replaced soon enough by the day's new layer of smells. Rome is like that, always renewing itself in scent and noise. He pauses again near a temple dedicated to Mercury, the god of merchants and thieves. The distinction between the two has never been very clear. Lucius offers another small olive and whispers, "Keep my coins safe today, even if I have to lie to earn them." The statue looks back with its eternal grin, saying nothing, which seems like agreement enough. By now, the forum is close. The wide square begins to reveal itself through the morning haze. Marble columns, bronze statues, vendors shouting, the flapping of awnings, and somewhere the sound of a distant trumpet. He feels a familiar mix of dread and excitement in his stomach. Every day is a gamble here. Some days he earns enough to feast like a senator. Other days he returns home with only dust on his hands and disappointment in his heart. But this morning feels promising. The air is warm, the figs look ripe, and his spot, if still available, offers just enough shade to keep him comfortable until noon. A small group of children runs past, laughing, one of them clutching a stolen apple. Behind them, a vendor shouts and shakes his fist, but the children vanish into the crowd. Lucius chuckles softly. Mercury's apprentices, he mutters. He tightens his grip on the cart and pushes forward through the final stretch. The sound of chatter grows louder, like waves hitting stone. The forum awaits, wide and glittering in the morning light. Statues of gods and generals look down upon the chaos below. Traders shouting, buyers arguing, beggars singing their rehearsed sorrows. Lucius takes a deep breath. He has walked this path so many times that each crack in the pavement feels familiar. Yet each day carries the same pulse of uncertainty. Will he sell enough? Will a tax collector notice him? Will fortune smile, or will she turn her face away again? He crosses the final threshold into the open square, his cart rolling over the ancient stones. The smell of oil, honey, and sweat blends into one dizzying perfume. He is here now, among the heartbeat of the empire, one voice in an endless chorus of survival. The forum is already awake, long before the sun has reached its height. Voices overlap in a noisy harmony that never quite settles. Traders call out their prices, customers argue, donkeys bray, and coins clink like tiny metal raindrops on stone. The smell of Rome at market hour is unmistakable: roasted nuts, fish brine, spilled wine, and dust. Always dust. Lucius steers his cart through the crowd, choosing his path carefully between stalls and barrels. A group of potters are setting up nearby, their hands already covered in clay. To his left, a man selling cooked sausages shouts over the noise, claiming his meat was blessed by the gods themselves. The steam rising from his pan makes the claim easier to believe, at least for a moment. Lucius keeps moving. He knows exactly where he wants to be, near the edge of the square, just beyond the shadow of the Temple of Saturn. It is not the busiest spot, but it is steady, and it offers a sliver of shade that lasts most of the morning. He has fought for that patch before. Others know it too. As he approaches, he sees it empty, waiting as if it remembered him. Relief passes through him like a wave. He quickens his pace, pushing the cart into position and letting it settle with a low groan. He exhales, wipes his brow, and begins his small ritual of setting up. He starts by spreading a faded cloth across the cart, careful to smooth its creases. Then he lays out the figs in neat rows, adjusting their angle so they catch the light. The olives come next, glossy and dark, resting in shallow clay bowls. The trinkets, bone charms, tiny carvings, and one or two copper rings are placed at the front, where the curious can pick them up without knocking over the fruit. Historians still argue whether vendors like Lucius sold genuine goods or mostly fakes. Some say that ancient Rome thrived on counterfeits, fake perfumes, diluted wine, cheap jewelry sold as gold. Others believe that small traders, out of pride or necessity, maintained an honest trade. Lucius falls somewhere in between. He tells himself his goods are honest enough, though he sometimes polishes bronze a little too long and calls it copper to make it sound rarer. As he works, other vendors begin to claim their ground nearby. To his right, a woman selling herbs and spices arranges bundles of dried thyme and rosemary. The smell drifts toward him, clean and sharp. To his left, a man selling pottery sets out cups and bowls, each marked with the maker's seal. They nod to each other in silent truce, neighbors for another day. A few customers are already wandering among the stalls. The wealthy will not arrive until later, after their morning baths and breakfast. But the early crowd is full of servants, cooks, and slaves sent to fetch ingredients. They are the backbone of the market. They haggle fiercely but spend steadily. Lucius calls out softly, not shouting like the others. Fresh figs, sweet and ripe. Olives from Campania. Fair price. His tone is calm, almost lazy. He has learned that shouting too much makes people suspicious. In Rome, confidence sells better than volume. A woman approaches, carrying a woven basket. She picks up a fig, presses it between her fingers, and sniffs it. Too soft, she says flatly. Lucius smiles. That one, maybe. Try another. The softer ones are for those who like them melting on the tongue. She raises an eyebrow but chooses another fig, firmer this time. After a moment's hesitation, she nods. How much? 2 for 1, as fair as Mercury's own hand, he says. She gives a half laugh, half snort, counts her coins, and buys 4. As she leaves, Lucius feels a flicker of satisfaction. The first sale of the day is always a good omen. Behind him, a group of boys runs past, their laughter loud and chaotic. One of them brushes too close to his cart. Instinctively, Lucius grabs his pouch of coins. Nothing missing. He relaxes, though he knows better than to let his guard down again. He notices a new vendor setting up across from him, a young man selling trinkets similar to his own. Their eyes meet briefly, a silent measurement. Rivalry blooms quietly in markets like these. For now, they pretend not to notice each other. A donkey pulls a cart of amphorae past the stalls, its hooves clattering against the stone. The driver curses under his breath, trying to steer through the crowd. Lucius watches as the cart jolts over a rut, spilling a splash of wine from one cracked jug. The driver sighs and keeps going. Waste is a luxury in this city. The sun climbs higher, its light turning the marble columns of the Forum almost blinding. Lucius adjusts his awning, securing it with frayed rope. The shade it casts is thin but precious. The temperature rises fast, and he knows the figs will start to spoil if he does not sell them soon. He sprinkles a bit of water from a jug onto them, hoping to keep them fresh a little longer. Nearby, a group of men begins to argue over a piece of fabric. One claims it is from Egypt, the other insists it is from Gaul. The shouting draws a small crowd. Lucius smirks to himself. Every market day in Rome is part trade, part theatre. The louder the show, the faster the coins move. A woman approaches his cart again, this one older, her hands stained with the green of herbs. She inspects the olives carefully. These from Campania, she asks, skeptical. Lucius nods. Picked by hand near Capua, packed in salt by my own cousin. She studies him, then shrugs. You all have cousins in Capua. Still, she buys a small bowlful, muttering that they had better taste like it. He watches her go, smiling faintly. He has no cousin in Capua. In truth, he has no family left that he knows of. The city becomes your family when you stay long enough. It feeds you, cheats you, and holds you in its arms, all at once. A light breeze passes through the square, lifting bits of dust into the air. It carries the faint clang of metal from a smithy, the sound of chanting from a nearby temple, and the deep laughter of soldiers on leave. Rome feels infinite in moments like this, a living organism made of noise and stone. Lucius leans against his cart for a moment, watching it all. The movement, the noise, the patterns that repeat every morning. It is chaotic but predictable, exhausting but alive. Somewhere deep down, he loves it. The rhythm, the struggle, the strange comfort of knowing exactly what tomorrow will look like. He glances up at the statue of Saturn, looming high above the Forum, god of time and wealth. The marble face stares down, cold and patient. Lucius nods to it, half prayer, half challenge. "Let the day be kind," he murmurs, "or at least fair." The sun glints on the coins in his pouch. The market hums louder. The true business of the day has begun. The light grows harsher as the morning deepens, and with it the hum of the Forum transforms into a steady roar. The small vendors, like Lucius, know this is the golden hour, when the crowd is thickest and attention is most easily caught. The sound of sandals against stone, the murmur of deals, and the sing-song rhythm of haggling fill the air like a kind of music that only Rome knows how to play. Lucius steadies his cart and glances over the sea of people passing by. A pair of senators in white togas, trimmed with purple, glide past like swans in a pond, not looking at anyone. Their slaves carrying baskets behind them. They do not buy from men like Lucius. Their kitchens send servants instead. Still, their presence adds weight to the morning, a reminder that all this chaos spins beneath their calm. Disinterested eyes. Near his cart, a group of foreign traders from the east are setting out colorful cloth. Their accents twist Latin into something almost musical, and they speak of spices from far beyond the empire's edge. The crowd gravitates toward them, curious about anything that smells exotic. Lucius watches, amused. Every few weeks, someone new arrives with silk or cinnamon and stories about lands that half the city believes do not exist. Rome is full of dreams for sale. He leans forward, offering a fig to a passing cook in a stained tunic. "Sweet as a summer night," he says. The man snorts but buys too. A small win. Nearby, a fish seller yells so loudly that Lucius feels the words vibrating in his chest. "Fresh from the Tiber, still breathing when I caught them," he declares. The crowd laughs. Everyone knows the Tiber's fish are more mud than meat. Lucius shakes his head, smiling to himself. The man's boldness deserves respect, if not belief. The morning crowd grows denser. Women with baskets argue over fruit prices, their voices sharp and sure. Children dart between legs, their small hands too quick to see. Old men stand near the shade, debating politics they can do nothing to change. The city seems to breathe through them all. Inhale, exhale, barter, complain, buy, sell, and move on. Historians still argue whether the Roman Forum was truly a marketplace of equals or a stage for hierarchy. The marble temples and statues might suggest grandeur, but down here, in the dust and noise, equality is found in hunger and trade. A senator's cook and a beggar might both stand before the same cart, their coins different but their needs the same. Lucius sees it every day. He notices a young couple approaching. The man wears a soldier's cloak, faded but proud, and the woman has hair braided with bits of copper thread. She picks up one of the small bone carvings from his table, tracing the shape of a tiny horse. "For luck," Lucius says softly. "Traveller's charm, carved by an old man near Ostia." She smiles at the story, glancing at her companion, who shrugs but hands her a coin. They leave with the charm, fingers intertwined, and Lucius pockets the money. He likes moments like this, short, human, simple. Behind him, someone starts singing, not for worship, but to sell. A fruit seller with a voice so smooth it turns heads. The tune is a love song, the lyrics changed to praise her apples instead. It works. A crowd gathers. Lucius laughs quietly. Sometimes charm is better than quality. He adjusts the figs again, spraying a few drops of water from his jar to make them glisten. The trick works every time. A small boy with a shaved head stops to stare at them. Lucius hands him one and winks. "Tell your mother they're sweeter than honey." The boy grins and runs off, sticky fingers and all. As the sun climbs higher, the air thickens, the heat presses down, heavy and relentless. Sweat trickles down Lucius's back, and his tunic sticks to his skin. He wipes his brow with a cloth already damp from earlier. Around him, the smell of cooked meat and crushed herbs fills the air. The city's appetite grows with the temperature. He leans against the cart for a moment, taking in the chaos. There are so many voices, so many faces, yet somehow they blur into one living sound. A cart creaks past, carrying amphorae of wine, their surfaces cool and slick with condensation. A man selling perfumes from Egypt sprinkles a few drops into the air, and the scent of myrrh briefly cuts through the market's heavier smells. For one instant, Rome smells almost divine, but the moment fades. The perfume mixes with the sweat, the fish, the dust, and the olive oil, becoming what every Roman knows simply as the smell of life. Lucius hears laughter from nearby. A group of students are mocking an orator standing on a low step, practicing his speech to no audience but the air. "People of Rome," the young man declares, gesturing grandly, "we must rise above greed and corruption." The students throw bits of bread at him. He ignores them and continues, voice trembling but determined. Lucius shakes his head. In this city, even ambition sounds tired. He turns back to his cart, counting his sales. Not bad for mid-morning. A few coins more than yesterday at this hour. Maybe today will be generous after all. He takes a sip from his small flask of watered wine, feeling it cool his throat. Then something catches his attention, a murmur spreading through the crowd, small at first but growing fast. Heads turn toward the street leading from the forum gates. A group of soldiers is approaching, their armor gleaming in the sunlight. They march in formation, the sound of their sandals perfectly in sync. People move aside instinctively. Lucius straightens, watching. The soldiers stop near the forum steps. One of them reads a proclamation aloud, though the words are lost in the noise. Whatever it is, it matters to someone, but not to men like Lucius. He goes back to arranging his figs. Politics does not fill empty stomachs. Still, he listens half-heartedly. Something about taxes, about a new tariff on imported goods. That might mean higher prices for olive oil, maybe even for salt. He frowns. The empire's hunger for money never ends. He knows that by tomorrow, someone like him will pay the price. He looks toward the spice vendor nearby, who has paused mid-sale to listen, worry creasing his forehead. Their eyes meet briefly, and both men sigh. In Rome, fortune and loss arrive together, always uninvited. As the soldiers march away, life resumes instantly. The noise returns, louder than before, as if the market itself refuses to stay quiet for long. Lucius returns to his rhythm, selling, smiling, pretending not to care. A passing woman buys a handful of olives and asks, "Do you think the emperor ever walks here among us?" Lucius laughs. If he did, he would be trampled before his sandals touched the ground. She smiles, half believing him, half not, and moves on. The forum continues to pulse around him, full of strangers who share the same sun and the same struggle. Somewhere in the chaos, a bell rings from a nearby temple, marking the hour. The morning rush is far from over. For Lucius, it has only just begun. The heat rolls down from the rooftops now, pressing against Lucius's shoulders like a living thing. The square that once glittered in the soft gold of morning now shimmers under the glare of the Roman sun. Every surface gleams. The marble columns, the bronze statues, even the dusty cobblestones seem to radiate light. The marketplace is a sea of movement, and Lucius stands at its center, sweating through his tunic, breathing in air that tastes faintly of dust and hot metal. The cries of sellers have changed in tone. No longer bright and teasing, they are now strained, voices stretched thin by the sun. The fishmonger's call sounds like a desperate plea. The herb vendor's laughter has turned into a tired rhythm. Lucius feels the same fatigue creeping into his own body. Still, he forces a smile, because smiles sell better than frowns. He calls softly to a passing man in a red-dyed cloak. "Olives, seasoned and fresh. Better than the last ones you bought, I promise." The man glances at him, unimpressed. Everyone says that. Lucius nods. Then everyone must be right at least once. The man chuckles, buys a handful, and walks away chewing thoughtfully. Moments like this are what keep him going, not the coins, but the rhythm of exchange, the quick wit traded for a small sale. Rome thrives on clever words as much as on labor. A little girl with tangled hair stops by the cart next, pointing at the trinkets. Her mother hovers close behind, holding a basket of eggs. "Please, Mama," the girl says. "The horse one." "Please." The woman hesitates, her eyes flicking to Lucius. He smiles softly and says, "Tell you what, if she promises to help you carry that basket home, she can have it for 1 coin less." The woman's face relaxes into a grateful smile. She pays, and the girl beams as Lucius wraps the charm in a scrap of cloth. "It brings luck," he says quietly, "especially to good helpers. When they leave," he exhales slowly. There is something sacred about small kindness in a place like this, where everyone's eyes are on survival. Historians still argue whether Roman markets were places of honest trade or organized deceit. The surviving tablets and graffiti suggest both vendors fined for false weights, others praised for fairness. Lucius has seen both sides. He knows a man can cheat a customer once, but if he smiles and treats them well, they come back twice. Rome may forgive deceit, but it always remembers good manners. The heat grows unbearable. Sweat drips from his brow into his eyes, stinging. He reaches for his water jar, only to find it nearly empty. He tips the last bit into his mouth, savoring it like wine. The taste is warm and metallic, but it helps. He glances around. Other vendors are wilting too. A few have pulled cloths over their heads. One man has abandoned his cart entirely, leaving it under the care of a half-asleep assistant. A distant shout draws his attention. A cart carrying amphorae has lost a wheel, spilling its load across the stones. One of the jugs shatters, releasing a flood of olive oil that glistens in the sun. People laugh, cheer, or curse as the driver waves his arms helplessly. A few quick-handed boys rush forward, scooping what they can into broken pots. Rome wastes nothing. Lucius chuckles under his breath. Mercury bless their ambition, he mutters. Then he spots something else. A man slumped near the base of a column, too still to be merely resting. The crowd flows around him like water around a rock. No one stops. Lucius watches for a moment before turning away. He tells himself the man is only sleeping, though deep down he knows better. Rome has too many mouths and too few hands to feed them all. The city swallows its weak quietly beneath the noise of trade. He forces his thoughts back to work. A pair of cooks from a nearby tavern approach, arguing over how many olives they need for tonight's meal. He measures a generous portion, tossing in a few extras for good luck. They pay without haggling, a rare gift, and leave in mid-argument about spices. As he straightens the cart, he notices the bronze gleam of coins collecting in his small dish. Not fortune, but progress. Enough, perhaps, for fresh bread later. Maybe even a cup of wine at the tavern, if the day continues this way. The sun beats harder. He squints upward, tracing the sky between temple rooftops. A few lazy clouds drift across the blue, but they offer no relief. The smell of hot stone and human bodies fills the air. The market feels like it might melt into itself. To distract himself, Lucius focuses on the sounds. The dull thump of a butcher's cleaver, the splash of water poured over fruit, the rhythmic rattle of a dice game in the shade. He hears someone arguing over the price of a lamp, the metallic clang of dropped coins, and the shrill laughter of a group of women mocking a man's tunic. All of it blends into a living hum, and beneath it, faintly, he hears music. A flute, somewhere in the distance. The tune drifts over the noise, fragile but persistent, like a memory refusing to fade. For a moment, the market feels almost peaceful. He closes his eyes briefly, letting the sound carry him. The flute's melody reminds him of the countryside, fields beyond the walls, where the air is cool and clean, and mornings begin with birds instead of shouting. He has not left the city in years. He wonders whether he would even recognize silence anymore. When he opens his eyes, a shadow falls across the cart. A young man in fine sandals and a clean tunic stands there, studying the trinkets with idle curiosity. Clearly a visitor from a wealthier house, Lucius waits silently, letting him take his time. "These are simple," the young man says finally, voice light and distracted. "They are made by simple hands," Lucius replies. The man picks up a carved pendant shaped like a crescent moon. "Does it mean anything?" "Protection," Lucius says, "for travelers, lovers, or fools, depending on who wears it." The man laughs. "Then I should buy 3. He tosses 2 coins onto the table, far more than the price. "Keep the change, old man." Lucius nods. "And may the gods keep your fortune steady." The young man is gone as quickly as he appeared, his perfume lingering faintly in the heat. Lucius turns the coins in his hand, feeling their weight. Some days the city takes, some days it gives. Today, perhaps, it does both in balance. He wipes his hands on his tunic and looks up at the Temple of Saturn, its shadow now barely reaching his stall. Soon, he will have to move his awning again, chasing the shade as if chasing luck itself. The market continues, endless and alive. The cries, the smells, the shimmer of sunlight on bronze. Rome does not rest, and neither can he. Lucius adjusts the cloth on his cart, straightens his bowls, and calls out again, voice steady despite the heat. Figs, sweet and ripe, olives, fresh from Campania, taste before you buy. The words drift into the thick air, joining 1,000 others, until they are no longer his but Rome's, the voice of the city itself, speaking in the language of trade. By midday, the heat is almost unbearable. The stones beneath Lucius's sandals feel warm enough to scorch, and the air shimmers in waves above the marble statues. The once bright chatter of the crowd turns sluggish, like sound wading through syrup. Vendors fan themselves with scraps of cloth, and customers move slowly from stall to stall, blinking against the glare. Lucius wipes his face with the corner of his tunic. His back aches from hours of standing, but the rhythm of trade does not allow rest. Coins clink, hands reach, and bargains rise and fall like the tide. Every voice in the forum blends into a low, constant murmur, except for those bursts of argument that pierce through, sharp and sudden, before fading again into the hum. He leans briefly against his cart and lets his eyes wander beyond the marketplace. From where he stands, he can see the Senate building in the distance, its steps crowded with men in white togas. Their voices carry faintly over the market, noise, deep, confident, and rehearsed. They argue about taxes, policies, and trade routes, while down here in the dust, men like Lucius argue about the price of figs. It amuses him sometimes how similar the two worlds are. The powerful bargain for empires, the rest bargain for lunch. A shout draws his attention back to the crowd. A group of men in soldiers' tunics are gathered near the fountain, talking loudly, waving their hands for emphasis. Lucius catches fragments of their conversation. Grain prices, senatorial greed, shortages in Ostia. He hears laughter, bitter and knowing. Historians still argue whether political rumors spread more in taverns or marketplaces. But anyone who has ever stood in the forum knows the truth. Politics lives here, between stalls of figs and barrels of wine, carried in whispers that move faster than the wind. Lucius sells a few more olives to a weary woman with soot on her arms. A cook, probably, and then listens as the men nearby begin a heated discussion about the emperor. They say he plans another festival, one says. More games, more shows, while people starve. The other scoffs. Let them starve with entertainment. That's the Roman way. Lucius cannot help but smile. Rome loves its irony almost as much as it loves bread and spectacle. The air grows thick with the smell of roasting meat as a food vendor nearby turns a spit over glowing coals. The scent teases the crowd, drawing a small line of people clutching coins. The man sprinkles herbs into the fire, releasing a cloud of fragrant smoke that drifts across the square. Lucius inhales deeply, imagining the taste even as his stomach growls. He cannot afford a full portion, but sometimes just the smell feels like a meal. A shadow passes over his cart. A tall man wearing a clean white toga, far too fine for this part of the market, stands before him, inspecting the figs. His eyes are sharp, his expression unreadable. Lucius feels a flicker of unease. "Good fruit," the man says. His voice carries authority, though he speaks quietly. "Where are they from?" "Southfields, near Capua," Lucius replies automatically. The man nods slowly, as if testing the truth in his tone. "And you sell them all yourself?" Lucius hesitates. The question feels too simple. "Yes," he says finally. "My own trade." The man glances at the coins, the trinkets, the way Lucius keeps one hand close to his money pouch. Then he smiles thinly and moves on without buying anything. Lucius watches him disappear into the crowd. He has learned to recognize men like that, officials, inspectors, or worse, informants. They appear without warning, ask harmless questions, and vanish, leaving worry behind. He exhales slowly, pushing the thought away. Worry is for later. The crowd keeps moving, and so must he. As the noise grows again, he notices a familiar face, a fellow vendor named Milo, who sells painted lamps near the temple steps. Milo waves him over, but Lucius only nods. Business cannot stop, not even for friendship. Still, it is comforting to see someone who shares his rhythm, someone who understands what it means to spend a life talking, smiling, selling, pretending. He adjusts the cloth over his cart and glances at the trinkets. One piece catches the light, a tiny bronze coin pendant. He remembers where he found it, months ago, near the Tiber's edge. He has kept it not for its value, but because it feels like a charm against misfortune. In Rome, a man takes luck wherever he can find it. A voice interrupts his thoughts, high and confident, belonging to a man standing on a small wooden crate not far away. "Citizens of Rome," he shouts, "listen well. The Senate grows fat while your purses grow thin." The orator is young, his face flushed, his gestures theatrical. People pause to listen, some out of interest, others out of boredom. Lucius listens too, though half his mind stays on his cart. The man continues, his speech rising and falling like music. "They claim to serve the people, but their hands never touch the dust of this market. Look at us, we labor while they feast." A few cheers break out. Others roll their eyes and walk away. Lucius smiles faintly. He has seen 100 orators come and go. Most vanish as quickly as they appear, carried off by guards or by silence. Still, he admires the man's courage. Rome rewards clever speech almost as much as it punishes it. A nearby merchant leans close to Lucius. "He'll be gone by sunset," the man mutters, too loud for his own good. Lucius nods. "But the city will still remember his words tomorrow." "Only until the next scandal," the merchant replies. "Or the next festival." Lucius chuckles softly. "Then perhaps that's enough." As the orator's voice fades into the crowd, the noise of trade swells again to fill the space he leaves behind. The hum of the market resumes its endless loop. Money changing hands. Laughter and argument intertwined. The living pulse of a city that never stops talking. Lucius watches the crowd. The faces blur together, some flushed with wealth, others hollow with hunger. He wonders whether the gods notice the difference. Maybe, to them, all men look the same from above. Tiny, busy creatures bartering over fruit and faith. A sudden breeze passes through, carrying dust and relief in equal measure. Lucius lifts his face toward it, eyes closed for a heartbeat. The moment feels almost holy. Then, from somewhere behind him, a voice shouts, "Tax collector coming." The words ripple through the crowd like a spark in dry grass. Vendors straighten their carts, hide coins, or pretend to be customers. Lucius feels his heart beat quicken. He knows the drill. Taxes are inevitable, but bribes are negotiable, and both can ruin a day. He quickly gathers his coins into his pouch and wipes the table clean, hoping to look smaller, less noticeable. Around him, the market's song changes key, fear humming softly beneath the noise. The sun glints off a polished bronze badge at the edge of the crowd. The collector approaches. The man with the bronze badge moves slowly through the marketplace, his pace deliberate and his expression calm to calm, the kind that makes honest men uneasy. The crowd ripples around him like water bending away from a stone. Everyone seems busy now, too busy, pretending not to notice him. Even the loudest sellers lower their voices. Rome has many gods, but the tax collector commands his own brand of fear. Lucius keeps his hands still on the cart. The trick, he knows, is to look neither nervous nor indifferent. Both attract questions. He straightens one of the fig baskets, takes a measured breath, and reminds himself to smile if spoken to. The collector stops at a nearby pottery stall first. Lucius pretends to rearrange his trinkets while listening out of the corner of his ear. There's the faint jingle of coins. Then a short conversation that ends with the vendor muttering under his breath after the man leaves. Typical, the collector turns again, scanning the rows of stalls. Lucius feels the gaze brush over him like a cold hand, but it passes on. For now, he exhales quietly and forces his shoulders to relax. The market begins to breathe again, cautiously, like after thunder. "Close one," says the spice seller beside him in a low voice. Lucius nods. He'll circle back. They always do. The spice seller grins weakly. Then sell fast before he does. Lucius smirks at that and gestures toward his cart. If the gods are kind, he resumes his routine. Figs shifted forward, olives stirred in their brine, charms arranged in little rows. The rhythm steadies his nerves. From the far end of the square comes the ringing of a handbell. The sound carries across the noise, clear and metallic. Lunch hour for the laborers nearby, a signal that half the forum will soon be searching for food or shade. Lucius watches as the first wave of workers trickles in. Stonemasons, stable boys, a few women from the textile quarter. Dust clings to their tunics and faces, but their eyes brighten at the sight of fruit and bread. He lowers his price slightly. It is better to sell cheaply than to return home with spoiled figs. 3 for 1, he calls out, fresh and sweet, cooled with the morning dew. It is a lie, but a small one. The figs are warm now, soft to the touch. Still, they sell quickly. Workers hand him coins slick with sweat, and he takes them with practiced ease. Trade does not care about dignity. Historians still argue whether Roman vendors had fixed prices or relied entirely on haggling. The truth, Lucius knows, depends on the heat and the hunger of the day. When the sun is this cruel, people will pay to finish faster. He wraps a handful of figs in a scrap of cloth for one man who pays and collapses under the shadow of the temple of Saturn to eat. Another customer buys olives and asks if the emperor's latest law means prices will rise again. Lucius answers with the safest word in Rome. Maybe. The market hums with midday life. Somewhere, a group of children are chasing each other with laurel leaves, pretending to be senators and soldiers. Their laughter cuts through the heat, bright and strange. Then, suddenly, the voice of the tax collector again, closer this time. Lucius's stomach tightens. The man stops at a stall 2 rows away, questioning a butcher about his earnings. The butcher argues, waving a cleaver for emphasis. Coins change hands, followed by the sound of polite farewell that drips with resentment. Lucius swallows hard. He counts his own coins quickly enough for bread, a bit of rent, and maybe a cup of watered wine later. But if the collector decides his dues are higher, that balance will vanish in a heartbeat. He thinks fast. From under the cart, he pulls a small cloth bag, half filled with older, chipped coins, the ones no one accepts anymore. He places it on the edge of the stall, easy to find, easy to surrender. A decoy offering. Moments later, the collector stands before him. Name, the man says simply. Lucius, he replies. His voice is calm, almost lazy, though his heartbeat is anything but. What trade? Fruit and trinkets, sir. The man eyes the goods. You sell much today. Enough to stay fed, Lucius says carefully. No more, no less. The collector's eyes narrow, but then soften into something almost like boredom. He gestures to the bag of coins. That your tax share? Yes, sir, Lucius answers quickly. The man opens it, glances inside, then ties it shut again without counting. You're wise to keep your due ready. Lucius nods, bowing his head slightly. Mercury, guide your day. The man smirks faintly. He'd better. I've got a dozen more stalls before shade. Then he moves on, leaving Lucius standing in the sun, sweat running down his temples, relief flooding through him like cool water. He waits until the man disappears from sight before letting out a low laugh. Mercury, guide your greed, he mutters under his breath. The spice seller beside him chuckles. You live to sell another day. Barely, Lucius says, still smiling. The tension in the market dissolves slowly, like dust settling after a storm. Vendors begin talking again, louder this time, as if reclaiming their space. Somewhere, a flute starts playing. Maybe the same musician from earlier. The tune drifts lazily through the heat. Lucius sits down on the edge of his cart, finally allowing himself a brief rest. He takes the small loaf of bread he bought from a neighbor that morning and breaks it in half. It's dry, but he dips it into a bowl of olive brine, pretending it's fine oil. The salt wakes up his tongue. He looks around, chewing slowly. The forum feels different now, slower, softer. The morning's chaos has melted into an afternoon lull. Even the arguments sound lazy, words drawn out like long sighs. He finishes eating, wipes his hands on his tunic, and leans back against the cart. The sky above the rooftops is bright enough to hurt his eyes. Somewhere beyond it all, beyond the marble and smoke, the empire stretches endlessly fields, deserts, seas. But here, in this small corner of it, The world has shrunk to the size of a few coins and a basket of figs. He closes his eyes for a moment, listening to the murmur of Rome, steady and eternal. The heat does not fade, but the intensity of the day shifts. The market settles into a slower rhythm, as if the entire city has agreed to breathe together for a while. The morning rush is gone, and those left in the forum now move with deliberate ease. Merchants nursing small cups of wine, servants fanning themselves under cloth canopies, beggars resting against the columns in the little shade that remains. Lucius sits beside his cart, picking at the edge of the wooden handle with his fingernail. His fingers are stained green from handling olives all morning, and his knuckles ache. Still, the quiet feels almost merciful. The sun has dulled into a relentless hum, heavy but predictable. He takes another small drink from his flask, though there is barely enough to wet his tongue. The watered wine tastes faintly sour, but it cools the back of his throat. His stomach growls, reminding him that the bread he ate was not enough. Maybe later he will buy a cup of stew from the food seller near the baths, the one who gives generous portions when he is in a good mood. For now, Lucius leans back and lets his gaze drift across the forum. The colors blur together: red tunics, brown cloaks, flashes of gold from jewelry and coins. The marble temples gleam too brightly, their shadows too sharp. Even the pigeons seem to move slowly, as if burdened by the heat. A few stalls away, the spice seller hums a slow tune while sifting cumin through his fingers. Lucius recognizes it, an old sailor's song, something about luck and wind. He finds himself humming along softly, without meaning to. The music mingles with the faint chatter of customers, the clang of a distant hammer, and the rhythmic splash of water from the fountain. It all becomes one sound, familiar and endless. Historians still argue whether markets like these were the heart of Roman social life or merely its background noise. Some claim the forum was where friendships were formed, gossip spread, and politics disguised itself as trade. Others say it was simply survival, coins against hunger, every day the same. Lucius, if asked, would say both are true. You sell figs to feed yourself, but you trade words to feel human. He is just beginning to close his eyes when he hears a familiar sound, the metallic ring of a coin pouch, followed by the quick, deliberate steps of someone with authority. He opens his eyes and sees him, the tax collector, returning as expected. Lucius's throat tightens. He thought the man would be gone for hours. But the collector moves differently now, less formal, accompanied by another man in simpler clothes, who holds a small wooden box. Together, they walk from stall to stall, checking ledgers, marking lists. Lucius's earlier relief fades into a low, steady unease. He forces himself to stand, pretending to inspect his figs again. The collector is getting closer. When the two men reach the pottery stall beside him, Lucius hears the familiar pattern. A few questions, a brief argument, a clatter of coins, and a quiet threat disguised as politeness. The pottery seller's face tightens, his voice barely a whisper. You already took my share this morning. The collector's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Then consider this a review fee. Lucius looks away. He has learned that Rome rewards silence more than sympathy. But then the collector turns toward him. You, he says, pointing. The fruit vendor. Lucius, was it? Lucius nods. Yes, sir. Step forward. Lucius obeys, heart thudding. The collector gestures to his cart. "Show me your record of goods." "I keep no record," Lucius replies carefully. "I buy small, sell small. It changes every day." The man studies him for a moment, then tilts his head. "No record means I must estimate your dues." Lucius forces a smile. "You already collected them earlier, sir." "I paid my part." The collector glances toward his assistant, who flips open the wooden box filled with parchment slips. He scans them briefly, frowning, perhaps, but not enough. "The city raises its rates for imported produce this week. You understand, of course." Lucius's mouth goes dry. "Imported, that word again," he swallows. "These figs came from local fields, sir. Campania, not overseas." "Campania," the collector repeats, smiling faintly. "That's still import by city law." Outside the wall, outside the tax, Lucius feels heat rise in his chest. The wall, then the gods themselves should pay tax for the air that crosses it. The words escape before he can stop them. The collector's smile vanishes. The assistant shifts uneasily. The crowd around them pretends not to look, though every ear is listening. Lucius lowers his head. "Forgive me. The sun makes my tongue foolish." The collector's tone is cool now. "You're lucky I'm patient. 2 coins for your tongue's mistake, and another for your figs." Lucius hesitates, then reaches into his pouch. The coins feel heavy, not because of their metal, but because of what they mean. Bread, gone. Wine, gone. He places them in the man's hand. The collector nods, tucks them away, and moves on without another word. Lucius stands still for a long time after he leaves. The noise of the market returns, slowly, cautiously. Someone laughs nearby. Another vendor calls out prices. Life resumes as if nothing happened. But for Lucius, the day feels lighter and heavier all at once. Lighter from losing the coins, heavier from what they took with them. The small hope that maybe today would be different. He sits again, staring at his half-empty baskets. The figs glisten dully in the sun. The olives look tired. He feels the same. The spice seller glances over, shaking his head. "Bad luck," he says quietly. Lucius forces a small grin. Luck is a spoiled fruit. Sweet one day, rotten the next. The man laughs softly. "Then let's hope tomorrow's harvest is better." Lucius nods, but his smile doesn't linger. He looks out over the forum, watching the shadows slowly shift as the afternoon wears on. The air buzzes with flies and faint music. The tax collector disappears down another street, his bronze badge catching the light one last time before vanishing into the crowd. Lucius exhales. The worst part of the day is over. Or so he hopes. The sun begins to slide lower, though its heat still clings stubbornly to the stones. A strange calm settles over the forum, a heavy stillness born from exhaustion. It is the quiet that follows survival, not peace exactly, but a moment when the city pauses to breathe between battles. Lucius sits back on the edge of his cart, eyes half closed. His hands are sticky with fruit juice, his throat dry, and his back aches in ways that never quite go away. Still, he has made enough sales to cover what he lost to the tax collector. Barely around him. The energy of the morning has faded into a lazy drift. A few vendors lie stretched out on blankets, fanning themselves with bits of cardboard. Others nap sitting up, heads bowed like wilted flowers. The crowd has thinned. Those still moving are quieter now, cooks fetching last-minute supplies, slaves carrying amphorae of water, and beggars weaving through the stalls in search of crumbs. A cat pads along the edge of the fountain, licking its paw and glancing toward Lucius's cart. He tosses it a bit of fig skin, which the animal sniffs before turning away in disdain. Even the cats are spoiled here, he thinks. He leans back, letting his head rest against the cart handle. The sky above the marble rooftops is a pale blue, softening to gold near the horizon. The Temple of Saturn throws a long shadow across the square, stretching like a cool hand over the stones. The sound of a distant water cellar breaks the stillness. Cold water, fresh from the aqueducts. He calls, his voice cracked but cheerful. Lucius debates spending his last coin on a cup, but decides against it. Better to wait. Water at home is free, even if it tastes like dust. He closes his eyes again and listens. The city hums gently, footsteps, faint laughter, the rhythmic squeak of a wheel turning somewhere down the road. The sound of Rome half asleep. Historians still argue whether the common people of Rome truly rested during the day, or whether rest was a luxury only imagined by poets. Lucius knows the truth lies in between. You don't rest because you can, you rest because you have to. The body decides for you. His thoughts begin to drift, untethered. He thinks of the countryside he hasn't seen in years, of trees instead of temples, of rivers instead of fountains. He wonders whether the air out there still smells of grass instead of smoke. Sometimes, when he dreams, he sees fields and hears nothing but the wind. But each morning he wakes to this stone, sweat, and coins. A soft clatter brings him back. The pottery seller next to him has accidentally knocked over one of his cups. It shatters, and both men watch the pieces scatter like pale shells across the ground. Lucius smiles faintly. "Bad luck," he murmurs. The man shrugs. At least it wasn't the big one. They both laugh quietly, the kind of laugh that costs no energy but still feels good. The lull stretches on. The crowd moves slower still. Even the flies seem to give up buzzing. Lucius takes a small knife and begins carving a line into the edge of his cart, a habit he's developed over the years. Each cut marks a day he survived without losing everything. The wood is nearly full of them now. Hundreds of tiny grooves in a pattern that only he understands. He pauses when he hears new footsteps approaching, not hurried, not cautious, just steady. Opening his eyes, he sees an older man in a simple brown robe. The robe is dusty, the hem frayed. A pilgrim, perhaps, or one of the wandering preachers who come and go like the seasons. The man stops in front of the cart. His face is lined but calm, and his eyes are strangely bright. "You sell figs?" he asks, voice gentle. Lucius nods. Figs, olives, a few trinkets for luck. The man studies the figs but doesn't reach for them. Instead, he looks up. "Luck," he repeats. "Do you believe in it?" Lucius chuckles softly. "I believe it runs faster than I do." The man smiles, then stops chasing it. Before Lucius can answer, the man drops 2 small coins onto the table and takes a handful of figs. "Keep the change," he says. "You'll need it when you stop running." And just like that, he walks away. Lucius watches him disappear into the haze, puzzled. Rome is full of philosophers who talk about fortune and fate, but this one felt different. Too calm to be mad, too poor to be a liar. He pockets the coins, still thinking about the words. Stop chasing it. He leans back again. The sun dips lower now, the golden light thickening and softening the sharp edges of the forum. The statues glow like ghosts. The air feels heavy but kinder. The spice seller beside him yawns. Almost time, he says. Soon the evening rush will start. Lucius nods slowly. The last fire before the dark. The man grins. That's when the real coins fall. Lucius smiles, but his eyes stay on the fading horizon. For now, it is quiet. The world is caught between exhaustion and renewal. In the shadow of the temples, Rome feels almost gentle, as if, just for this hour, it remembers that even the poor deserve a pause. The flute player from earlier begins again, his melody rising faintly through the still air. It is slow, wistful, almost like a lullaby. Lucius closes his eyes and listens, the sound settling into him like cool water. He can almost forget the tax collector, the noise, the heat, the endless repetition of days. For a few minutes, there is only the music and the slow, steady heartbeat of a city that never stops moving, even when it pretends to sleep. The first real breeze of the day arrives, just as the flute's last note fades into the hum of the forum. It slips through the narrow streets and around the marble columns, lifting the dust from the stones in a soft swirl. The vendors who had slumped in their stalls stir awake, blinking against the changing light. The long, slow afternoon has ended, and Rome begins to wake again for the evening trade. Lucius stretches, the stiffness in his shoulders popping faintly. His tunic is streaked with sweat and dust, but he feels the faint stirrings of energy return. This is the second rhythm of the market, calmer than the morning, but sharper, more focused. Those who come now are not wanderers, but buyers with purpose. They come with lists, with hunger, with urgency, before night falls. He stands and adjusts the cloth awning over his cart, pulling it forward as the shadow of the Temple of Saturn creeps closer. The shade returns, cool and temporary, but enough. He wipes his hands on his tunic and straightens the display. The remaining figs, the few bowls of olives, the charms and trinkets now glinting softly in the golden light. The air changes with the light. The sharp smells of midday sweat, smoke, spoiled fruit fade into the richer scents of evening. Roasted meat, fresh bread, the faint tang of wine from a nearby tavern. A cook ladles stew into bowls, calling out his prices with a hoarse but cheerful voice. The sound draws a slow trickle of customers from the edges of the forum. Lucius's own trade begins to move again. A tired house slave buys a small bowl of olives, paying with coins she has clearly counted too many times. A young man in dusty armor stops to eat a fig before continuing toward the tavern. A woman with painted lips buys a charm, saying she will gift it to her lover if it brings luck. Lucius watches them all with quiet amusement. Every purchase is a story, and every story ends the same. The coin leaves one hand and lands in another. The eternal heartbeat of Rome. Historians still argue whether markets like this truly closed at dusk or lingered deep into the night. Some accounts describe late-night bartering under torchlight, while others insist that curfew laws forced vendors to pack up by sundown. Lucius knows the truth as he lives it. The market closes only when the light dies from the coins. He feels a familiar comfort in the growing shadows. Evening is his favorite part of the day, not because of profit, but because of how everything softens. Faces lose their sharpness, voices drop to murmurs, and even the stones seem to cool. The city that screamed all day now begins to whisper. Then, somewhere down the street, the whisper becomes a shout. Lucius looks up just in time to see a man running through the crowd, clutching something close to his chest. Behind him, another man shouts in anger, "Thief, stop him!" The crowd ripples in confusion. Some freeze, others move aside instinctively. The thief darts between stalls, knocking over a basket of oranges that scatter like rolling coins. The pursuing man, a merchant, by the look of his cloak, struggles to follow, shouting curses that echo off the marble walls. Lucius's cart stands near the path between them. He doesn't move at first. He has seen such chases before, and they usually end without his involvement. But the thief, thin and desperate-looking, changes direction suddenly and slams straight into Lucius's cart. The impact sends the figs tumbling. Olives roll across the stone. The thief stumbles, trying to regain his footing, but Lucius grabs him by the arm without thinking. The man thrashes like a trapped bird, eyes wide with panic. "Let go," he hisses. "Please, let go." Lucius tightens his grip. "You spilled my fruit," he says evenly, though his pulse races. The merchant arrives, breathless, pointing. "That's him. He stole from me." The crowd gathers quickly, sensing entertainment. Rome loves a spectacle, even a small one. The thief twists again, jerking free of Lucius's grip. He darts toward the nearest exit from the square, but this time 2 guards appear, drawn by the commotion. They block his path easily. The man freezes, eyes darting between escape and surrender. He chooses neither. He drops the stolen pouch, coins scatter across the ground, and bolts toward a side alley. The guards give chase, their sandals slapping against stone. The crowd cheers as if watching a play. The merchant bends to pick up his coins, muttering, "Fools, all of them." Lucius kneels to retrieve his fallen figs. Most are bruised, some split open. He sighs, picking up what he can. A few people step forward to help, though mostly they just watch. The spice seller from the next stall comes over, shaking his head. "You caught him for nothing, friend." Lucius shrugs. "I caught him for my figs." The guards can chase him for glory. They both laugh softly, though there's no humor in it. Rome is full of thieves. Some wear cloaks, others wear badges. You learn not to take it personally. As the excitement fades, the market regains its rhythm. The spectators drift away, talking about the chase as if it were theater. The merchant leaves, clutching his recovered pouch. The guards do not return. Lucius sits again, looking at the mess. A few figs are salvageable. The rest he pushes into a small pile near the gutter for the stray dogs to find later. He wipes his hands and exhales. "So much for luck," he mutters. The spice seller nods. "At least no one took your cart." Lucius chuckles. Yet he looks around at the crowd, noticing how icily the city forgets. The same people who cheered moments ago now haggle again, laugh again, live again. Rome forgets everything except itself. The last of the sun slides behind the rooftops. The marble statues glow briefly, then fade into shadow. The lamps are being lit now, small flames flickering to life, one by one across the square. The air cools, and with it, the energy returns. The evening rush begins. People move faster now, eager to buy before the darkness deepens. Lucius straightens his cart again, shakes off the dust, and smiles to no one in particular. The day may have bruised him, but it hasn't beaten him. He calls out once more, his voice steady and smooth. Figs, fresh and sweet. Olives, seasoned and fair. Last chance before the night. The words rise above the hum of the crowd, carried by the wind and the glow of the lamps. The city listens, and the city answers, as it always does. The lamps glow softly now, dots of warm orange light flickering against the white marble and deepening shadows. Rome after sunset feels like another city entirely, slower in movement but alive in spirit. A city that hums rather than shouts. Smoke drifts lazily from torches set into iron brackets, and the air smells faintly of oil and spice. Lucius adjusts the wick of a small lamp hanging from his cart. The flame catches after a few attempts, casting a soft light over his remaining goods. The figs look darker under it, their skins deep red and glossy, while the olives gleam like small black pearls. The light also reveals the wear on his hands, cuts, calluses, small burns from hot metal and rough rope. He rubs them together, sighs, and leans on the cart. The marketplace has changed in tone. The morning's commerce and afternoon's fatigue have given way to something stranger, almost festive. Street performers begin to gather near the temple steps. A man juggling clay cups, a boy playing a wooden flute, a woman with painted eyes reading fortunes from a deck of carved bone tiles. Lucius watches them with quiet curiosity. The fortune teller draws the largest crowd. Her voice carries clearly across the square. The gods speak in signs. My friends, will your fortune turn tonight, or has it already passed you by? The crowd laughs nervously. People like to pretend they don't believe, but they always listen closely. Rome is full of skeptics who pay for luck anyway. Historians still argue whether such fortune-tellers were respected or merely tolerated, priests without temples, prophets without faith. Lucius suspects they were both, depending on the coin in their hands. The woman's eyes flick toward him briefly, sharp and knowing. You there, the fig seller, she says suddenly, you carry two kinds of fortune. One that feeds the body, and one that tests the heart. Lucius freezes as heads turn toward him. He offers a polite smile, and which will pay my rent. Laughter ripples through the crowd, and the woman smiles in return. The one you keep pretending you don't believe in. Before he can reply, she turns away, already calling out to another passerby. The crowd drifts after her, and the moment dissolves. Lucius shakes his head, amused. She knows how to sell words. He murmurs. The spice seller beside him laughs softly. You both do, only hers spoils slower. They share the joke quietly. As the night deepens, new faces fill the forum. The wealthy come now, their servants carrying lamps and baskets. The poor gather in corners to share bread and gossip. Soldiers swagger through, loud with wine and confidence. Musicians tune their instruments, filling the air with slow, meandering tunes that make the night feel endless. Lucius sells steadily, though the pace is gentler now. People linger longer, talking more, buying less. He doesn't mind. The conversation is its own kind of payment. A group of women stops by his stall, 3 of them, laughing and teasing one another. Their arms are decorated with bronze bracelets, their robes trimmed with color. One of them points at the small bone charms. For love or for protection? She asks. Lucius smiles. Both, if you wear it right. They giggle, exchanging glances, and buy too. As they leave, one of them calls back, "You should sell words instead of figs." He laughs. They're harder to weigh. The sound of laughter and music swells around him. For a brief moment, the city feels weightless. No taxes, no hunger, no cracked stones. Only the soft pulse of human noise and the glow of firelight. But not everyone is celebrating. Near the fountain, a man stands on a low wall, shouting about omens. His voice cuts through the chatter. The gods are angry. The river runs lower each month. The temples are rich, but the people go hungry. Some ignore him. Others listen, drawn by fear more than faith. Lucius watches him closely. He's seen this before. Prophets who appear when the city grows restless, shouting until someone silences them. A group of soldiers strolls by, laughing, but their eyes narrow when they hear the man's words. One of them says something to another, and they move closer. Lucius turns back to his cart, pretending to focus on his olives. The last thing anyone needs is attention from men with swords. The prophet keeps shouting, "Do you think the gods sleep? No, they watch. They count your coins and your sins alike." Then the sound changes, a dull thud, a gasp from the crowd. The soldiers have struck him, not hard enough to kill, but enough to quiet. He falls to his knees, still muttering. The crowd disperses quickly. Within moments, it's as if nothing happened. Lucius stares at the empty space where the man stood. The marble behind him gleams clean and uncaring. Rome forgets fast. It must. The spice seller mutters under his breath. He'll be gone by dawn. Lucius nods slowly. We all will. Someday. The mood shifts back to calm, but something in the air feels heavier now. The laughter doesn't ring quite as loudly. The music sounds slower. The lamps flicker in the faint breeze, their flames bending like small, uncertain prayers. He sells a few more figs, a few more olives. People still buy, still laugh, still live. But under it all, there's that strange tension, the quiet reminder that fortune is fickle, and Rome's favor even more so. As the hour grows late, he starts packing away the unsold goods. The air has cooled enough for comfort, and the sounds of the city begin to fade into distance. The last bursts of laughter, the clatter of closing carts, the hiss of torches being doused. He glances once more toward the empty wall by the fountain. The prophet is gone. Only the echo of his words lingers. Lucius exhales slowly, his breath visible in the cool air. He whispers something softly to himself, though even he isn't sure if it's a prayer or a curse. Then he lifts his cart handles, the wood creaking, and prepares to head home. The night in Rome never truly sleeps, but for men like him, it's enough that it dreams quietly. The last of the torches around the forum flicker low, their flames bowing in the night breeze. The crowds thin until the square feels wide again. spacious in a way that only silence can create. The marble columns seem taller now, their shadows longer. The air has cooled, but it carries the faint echo of everything that happened through the day. The laughter, the arguments, the songs, the shouts. Rome holds its noise, even in quiet. Lucius stands beside his cart, taking in the scene before he begins the final work of the day. Around him, other vendors are packing up, folding cloths, counting coins, calling soft goodbyes to one another. Some head to taverns, others toward the narrow streets where the smell of stew and cheap wine drifts from doorways. He wipes down the cart carefully, brushing away dust and bits of crushed fig. The wooden surface bears the scars of years of work, scratches, stains, small carvings he has made to mark good days and bad. He runs a hand over them like a man reading an old story. The lamps around him flicker one by one as the guards make their rounds, extinguishing flames to mark the end of trade. A few children dart between stalls, laughing quietly as they collect bits of dropped fruit or scraps of cloth. He lets them take what they find. It costs him nothing to be kind. When the last customer drifts away, he finally counts his earnings. The coins clink softly, a familiar, comforting sound. Not much, but enough. Enough to pay for his rent, his supper, and perhaps a cup of watered wine. Enough to keep tomorrow possible. He sighs, feeling both relief and fatigue wash over him. It's the same every day, the small victory of survival, won by sweat and luck and stubbornness. Historians still argue whether ancient Roman vendors saw themselves as part of the empire's grandeur or as people merely surviving beneath it. Lucius would laugh at the question. Empire is marble and gold. Life is fig juice on your fingers and dust in your lungs. He ties the cloth over his remaining goods, securing it with a frayed rope. The spice seller beside him waves as he pushes his own cart away. See you at dawn, Lucius. Lucius raises a hand. If the gods don't change the market before then. The man chuckles and disappears into the dim street beyond. For a few moments, Lucius stands alone. The square that had been alive with thousands now feels like the inside of a shell, hollow, echoing, yet peaceful in its emptiness. The moonlight spills gently over the columns, bathing them in pale silver. He looks up at the statue of Saturn and nods, the same silent acknowledgement he gives every night. Time keeps its dues, he says quietly. He grips the handles of his cart and starts pushing it toward the road that leads home. The wheels creak in rhythm with his steps. The streets beyond the Forum are calmer now, though not empty. He passes a few other vendors heading the same way, their carts rattling softly in the night. From open doorways, the sounds of conversation and clinking cups drift into the cool air. He pauses briefly outside a tavern. The smell of roasting meat fills the street, and laughter spills out like music. For a moment, he's tempted to go inside. But the last few coins in his pouch are already counted for rent, and he knows better than to gamble tomorrow's bread for tonight's comfort. He nods politely to the owner at the door and moves on. As he walks, he notices the faint glow of the city's night lamps, small bowls of oil set into alcoves along the walls. Their flames tremble in the breeze, painting the narrow streets with shifting shadows. Somewhere far away, a dog barks, followed by the muffled clatter of a dropped pot and a burst of laughter. Rome at night is both quieter and louder, depending on where you listen. The distant roar of taverns, the faint chanting from a temple, the cry of a baby from an upper window, all part of the same lullaby. He stops at a corner where a man sits cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by small clay figurines. The man is humming softly to himself, selling nothing, simply waiting. Lucius recognizes him, one of the wandering craftsmen who drift between districts, trading art for food. The man looks up. A good night for trade. Lucius shrugs. Good enough to try again tomorrow. The craftsman smiles. Then you've won. Lucius nods, unsure whether to agree. Do you sell many of those? Only to those who see them. The man says, most people look without seeing. Lucius studies the little figurines, animals, gods, faces, all molded from simple clay. He picks one up, a tiny dog, its tail curved as if wagging. Keep it, the craftsman says, for company. Lucius hesitates, then pockets it. And what do I owe you? Only a story, the man replies. Tell someone tomorrow that I once made something worth keeping. Lucius smiles. That I can afford. He continues down the street, the little clay dog bumping softly against the coins in his pouch. The road narrows as he moves toward the poorer quarter. The buildings lean closer together, their upper floors almost touching. Laundry lines hang limp between windows. The smell changes, less spice, more smoke and damp stone. The air feels heavier here, but it's familiar, and familiarity is its own kind of comfort. A woman with a bucket of water steps aside to let him pass. Good evening, Lucius, she says. He nods. Good evening, Livia. How's the baby? As loud as ever, she laughs. That's how I know he's alive. Then the gods are kind, Lucius says, smiling faintly. He keeps moving until he reaches the narrow alley where his room waits. The door is unmarked, wedged between two taller buildings. He pushes the cart inside and closes it softly behind him. For the first time all day, he lets his shoulders drop. The silence of the small room feels immense after the noise of the forum. The faint light of the moon slips through the cracks in the shutter, painting thin silver lines across the floor. He sets the cart aside, removes the cloth covering, and looks at what's left. A few bruised figs, a handful of olives, a coin or two. Not much, but enough to mean tomorrow exists. Lucius sits on the edge of his straw bed, eating one of the figs. Its sweetness surprises him. Even bruised fruit tastes like victory when the day is done. He lies back slowly, staring at the wooden ceiling, the faint creak of the city's heartbeat still echoing outside. Another day traded, another night earned. The first breath of night air seeps through the cracks in the wooden shutters, carrying the smell of smoke, wet clay, and the faint sweetness of roasted grain from a nearby bakery. Lucius lies still for a long time, listening to the muffled heartbeat of the city outside his small room. Rome never truly sleeps. It only sighs a slow, restless sound made of wheels on cobblestones, laughter from taverns, and distant footsteps echoing through narrow alleys. He sits up slowly, bones aching from the long day, and stretches until his back cracks. The motion feels good, almost ceremonial. He lights his small oil lamp again, watching the flame tremble before steadying. Its glow makes the shadows dance on the wall, stretching long and thin like the day's fatigue itself. His room is simple: a small cot, a clay jar of water, a stool that wobbles when he leans on it, and a wooden chest that holds everything he owns. The cart outside contains the rest. It isn't wealth, but it's stability, and that's worth more than comfort in a city like this. He reaches into his pouch and empties his day's earnings onto the table. The coins make a soft metallic sound, dull but satisfying. He sorts them slowly: rent, food, the small portion he saves for emergencies, and one coin he keeps aside, the lucky one. Not because it brings luck, but because it reminds him that he's still here. Historians still argue whether ordinary Romans like Lucius understood how vast their empire truly was, how far its borders reached. Some say the poor never thought beyond the next street, the next meal. But as Lucius studies the worn faces on his coins, emperors, gods, victories carved into silver, he wonders. He imagines soldiers marching under stars he's never seen, merchants sailing across seas he's never smelled, and people somewhere else, far away, speaking different words but still counting coins just like these. He places the lucky coin back in the pouch and sets it beside the lamp. The light glints on its worn edges, making it look newer than it is. He stands, pours a small cup of water from the jar, and takes a sip. It's warm, a little gritty, but it does its job. Then, without thinking, he takes one of the leftover figs from the cart and cuts it open with his small knife. The inside glows a deep red, soft and sticky. He eats slowly, letting the sweetness linger. The city hums outside, but softer now. A group of young men passes by, singing in low, uneven voices. A woman laughs somewhere above him, her voice trailing into the night. A cart rattles down the street, its wheels bumping against loose stones. All of it blends into one continuous, living sound. He thinks briefly of the faces he saw today, the laughing women with their bracelets, the prophet by the fountain, the tax collector's cold eyes, the children running through the market, all of them pieces of the same vast, messy puzzle called Rome. And he, a single tile in the mosaic, small, replaceable, but still part of the pattern. He smiles faintly at the thought. At least I'm in the picture, he murmurs. He stands and moves toward the window, pushing it open a few inches. The air is cooler now, the breeze faint but real. The street below glows with scattered light from oil lamps and the soft embers of dying torches. A cat leaps across a wall, silent as a thought. Lucius leans on the sill, looking out. From here, he can see the faint outline of the Capitoline Hill in the distance, its temples just visible against the sky. Even at night, Rome feels too big to belong to anyone, even to the men whose names are carved in stone above it. He hears someone singing again, closer this time. It's a low, slow tune, a song about harvest and home. Not a city song, but one from the countryside. He knows it. His mother used to hum it while stirring bread dough when he was small. He hasn't heard it in years. The sound catches something deep inside him. For a moment, the years between now and then vanish. He remembers the smell of rain on dry soil, the creak of the wooden door of his old home, the warmth of the small hearth where she baked. He remembers laughter that came easily and sleep that came sooner. Before he ever saw the marble of Rome. before life became trade and talk and endless survival. He blinks the memory away and smiles to himself. Nostalgia, he knows, is another kind of tax, one you pay with your heart instead of your coins. He returns to his cot and lies back. The straw rustles beneath him. The lamp still burns, but the flame is small now, its oil nearly gone. He watches it, eyes heavy. From outside, the city's noise fades slowly. Fewer footsteps, softer laughter, the quiet of people finally giving in to fatigue. The air feels gentler, the world smaller. He reaches for the small clay dog the craftsman gave him and sets it on the table beside the lamp. The firelight flickers over it, making its round little face look almost alive. For company, he murmurs, repeating the craftsman's words. Good company, too. He closes his eyes. For the first time that day, there is no sound but the gentle flicker of the lamp and the quiet rhythm of his own breathing. Outside, a bell tolls the late hour, one, then another, each slower than the last. Lucius counts them without meaning to. When the final echo fades, he whispers softly to the dark. Not a prayer exactly, but something close. Tomorrow, then. The lamp sputters once, twice, and goes out. The night takes the rest. The first hints of dawn have not yet touched the sky when Lucius opens his eyes again. The faint grey before sunrise seeps through the cracks in the shutters, painting the room in soft, shapeless light. For a long moment, he lies still, unsure whether he has truly slept or simply drifted through the darkness. His body feels heavy, but his mind is already awake, alert in the quiet way that only habit can train. The city outside murmurs faintly. Somewhere a rooster calls, answered by another far off. A cart rattles across the stones, its wheels echoing in the empty street. Rome is stretching again, ready to begin its endless cycle. Lucius sits up, rubbing his eyes. His shoulders ache, his back feels stiff, and his throat is dry. But this is how every morning begins, a negotiation between body and duty. He pours the last of the water from the clay jar and drinks it slowly, grimacing at the stale taste. His gaze falls on the little clay dog sitting by the lamp, the one the craftsman gave him. It sits patiently, exactly as he left it, its round eyes catching what little light filters into the room. He touches it gently, as if greeting an old friend, then slips it into the pocket of his tunic. He steps outside, pulling the door shut behind him. The air is cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of smoke from the night's fires. The street glistens slightly with dew, and somewhere nearby he hears the splash of a bucket being filled. A woman hums a slow tune as she sweeps her doorway. The city is waking, slowly but steadily. He pushes his cart into the street. The wooden wheels complain softly, the sound familiar, almost comforting. As he begins the slow walk toward the forum, the streets around him grow livelier. Bakers pulling hot loaves from their ovens, slaves hurrying with water jugs, boys chasing each other barefoot through puddles. The same faces, the same sounds, yet somehow different each morning, as if the city breathes new life into its repetition. Historians still argue whether ancient Rome ever truly slept. Some claim the streets were silent by midnight, others that trade and talk continued through the small hours. Lucius knows that Rome never stops, it only shifts who it belongs to. By night, thieves and dreamers. By day, workers and sellers like him. He turns a corner and pauses as the view opens ahead, the faint glow of the rising sun touching the marble of the temple of Saturn. Even from this distance, it looks otherworldly, its columns glowing gold against the pale sky. For a moment, he simply stands there, watching it. The same view he's seen 1,000 times, yet somehow it still manages to catch him off guard. He resumes walking, the cart bumping over the uneven stones. His sandals are already coated in dust. As he passes the bakery, the owner, a thick-armed man named Varro, waves from behind the counter. "Lucius, you survived another one." Lucius grins. "Barely. The gods like to test the patient." Varro laughs, tossing him a small heel of bread, for luck or pity. "Whichever you need more." Lucius catches it, bows playfully, and tucks it into his pouch. "I'll take both." He moves on, the smell of baking bread following him for several streets. Soon, the noise of the city thickens again, the cry of vendors setting up, the bray of mules, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer from somewhere down the road. By the time he reaches the forum, the first shafts of sunlight spill fully into the square, lighting up the columns, statues, and awnings with a soft glow. The marble gleams, wet with morning dew. He pauses at the entrance, feeling the familiar mixture of fatigue and determination. It is the same every day, the weight of the cart behind him, the hope of coins ahead. He steers the cart toward his usual spot near the temple's shadow. The space is empty, as it always is this early. He sets the cart in place, wipes his hands on his tunic, and begins to unpack. The motion feels automatic, almost like prayer. Figs on one side, olives on the other, trinkets arranged neatly along the front. Each item a small promise waiting to be kept. The first customers will not arrive for another hour, but he likes this time best. The calm before the city truly wakes. The soft sounds of others setting up around him. The faint smell of wet stone and crushed herbs. The sky lightening by degrees. He looks up at the temple steps, at the statue of Saturn watching over the square. The god of time and wealth, old and patient. Lucius raises a fig in mock salute. "Still here, old one," he says quietly, "still selling, still paying." He eats the fig himself, its sweetness filling his mouth. The day has not yet begun to take from him. That moment, brief and silent, belongs entirely to him. A voice breaks the quiet, the spice seller from yesterday, calling from 2 stalls away. "Lucius, you beat the sun again." Lucius smiles. The sun charges too much rent for sleeping in. The man laughs. "Fair point. Let's hope she brings good trade instead." Lucius nods, looking toward the horizon where the sunlight climbs slowly over the rooftops. "She always does," he says softly. "If we're patient enough." He takes a deep breath. The air smells of promise and exhaustion all at once. Around him, the market slowly fills with life. Footsteps, laughter, the rattle of carts, the murmur of voices blending into one another. Another day begins exactly as the last one ended, and yet it feels new. The same road, the same cart, the same city, and the same fragile hope that maybe, today, fortune will linger a little longer before she moves on. Lucius straightens his cart one final time, adjusts his awning, and waits for the crowd to find him. The sunlight reaches his hands, warm and steady, as Rome begins to breathe again. The sunlight grows stronger with each passing minute, spilling across the forum until every stone, column, and awning glows. The air is clear now, touched with the smell of baking bread, fresh herbs, and morning dust. Lucius stands behind his cart, rubbing his palms together to wake the stiffness from his fingers. The day feels new, but the motions are the same. Like a song he has sung so many times that his voice knows every note before his mind does. The city stretches awake around him. Vendors lift the corners of their awnings, sweeping out puddles left by the night. A woman selling herbs shakes a bundle of rosemary to test its freshness, releasing a clean, sharp scent that drifts toward him. Somewhere, a blacksmith's hammer begins its rhythm again. Clang, pause, clang, the city's heartbeat starting anew. Lucius watches the early customers appear, slaves sent from noble houses, bakers buying fruit for their loaves, men in plain tunics heading toward the baths before work. The same faces, the same words, the same dance of coins and smiles and haggles that will carry the day forward. A young boy stops by the cart, his hair messy, eyes wide. "You still have figs?" he asks. Lucius smiles. "Always. Rome would crumble without them." The boy grins and hands him a small copper coin. His entire allowance, no doubt. Lucius gives him 2 figs instead of 1. "One for you, and one for luck," he says. The boy beams and runs off, his bare feet slapping against the stones. Lucius watches him go, and for a moment he feels something like quiet pride. Maybe that's all a man can leave behind. Small kindnesses that ripple outward, unseen but real. As the forum fills, Lucius's cart becomes part of the great mosaic again. One stall among hundreds. One voice in the chorus of Rome's waking life. The tax collector from yesterday passes in the distance, not seeing him this time. The spice seller waves from his usual corner. The fortune teller has returned, already spreading her cloth and her carved tiles beneath the temple's steps. Lucius nods to her as their eyes meet. She smiles faintly, as if remembering the joke from last night. He raises a hand in greeting, and she lifts one in return, wordless and calm. The morning warms quickly, the golden light deepening into white. Lucius's hands move automatically. Figs passed, coins taken, olives measured. He listens to the rhythm of it all, the laughter, the haggling, the gentle background hum that never stops. Historians still argue whether the Roman people felt happiness in their ordinary days or merely endurance. Lucius would not understand the question. What he feels is something simpler, steadier, not joy, not sorrow, but the peace that comes from doing what must be done. The sun climbs higher, and the shade of the Temple of Saturn begins its slow retreat. Lucius adjusts his awning again, as he has every day for years. The motion is small, but it feels like an act of defiance, a way of saying, "Not yet." He pauses to eat a single fig, the sweetness cutting through the heat. He closes his eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, letting the noise fade into a gentle blur. Somewhere, someone is laughing. Somewhere else, someone is arguing. Somewhere far away, the empire turns. Soldiers marching, ships sailing, emperors plotting. And here, in the heart of it all, a man sells fruit. The thought makes him smile. He looks up at the statue of Saturn again, high above the market, marble face calm and patient. "Still here," Lucius whispers. "Still paying, still breathing." The god offers no reply, but the light seems to brighten, and a breeze passes through, cool and soft, lifting the edge of his awning. It smells faintly of salt, from the sea, perhaps, or from memory. Lucius closes his eyes, just for a heartbeat, and lets the moment pass through him. When he opens them again, a new customer stands before the cart, already holding a coin. He straightens, smiles, and begins the day's work anew. And now the market begins to fade. The noise, the laughter, the footsteps, all soften until they sound like the hush of the sea. The marble of the forum turns pale in the evening light, and the lamps begin their gentle flicker again. Lucius's cart stands empty, its baskets cleaned and folded, its wheels still warm from the sun. The work is done. He walks the familiar road home, the one he could follow blindfolded. The streets are quieter now, painted in gold and violet, the air thick with the scent of bread cooling and torches burning. Every sound, a closing door, a faint tune, a distant bark, feels slower, softer, as though the entire city exhales together. He pushes his cart into the alley, the same small space where his day began, and sets it against the wall. The clay dog sits on the table beside his lamp. He lights it carefully, the flame catching, steady and calm. In that soft light, Lucius sits and breathes. The noise of Rome is now a distant hum, a lullaby that has sung him through 1,000 nights. He has no wine, no feast, no crowd to applaud him, only his small room, his coin pouch, and the quiet satisfaction of having endured another day. Outside, the wind brushes past the shutters, cool and kind. The flame trembles once and steadies again. Lucius closes his eyes, the faintest smile on his face. The city will rise again tomorrow, and so will he. The wheel will turn, the voices will rise, and life will go on, steady, ordinary, eternal. And as the lamp burns lower, the last light of Rome fades gently into sleep.